made it again to the World Championships in January. Still very much got what it takes to be taking down this tournament.
Yeah, it's a bit weird. I think out of all of the world champions, for some reason, just because of the book incident, Pavel felt he had a lot to prove and just went on a tear throughout the whole of the year after, where the other guys were like Firebat went on to have a successful streaming career, obviously a very well-known caster, analyst, etc. ahqRoger sort of took it fairly easy the next year. Pavel came out with this sort of whole, you know what, I'm going to prove I'm better than everybody, and just kept on winning and winning, and here he is again with Invitational, another chance to win a lot of money.
With a ban here that makes sense given his lineup, but it's a very interesting way to go. We could see from his decks that he's not going to be banning Warlock because he's got Spellbreakers in his aggressive decks, but usually Priest is the way I would expect players to ban outside of that. But the thing is, he's built his decks to be able to try and beat the Priest. He's got the Jungle Giants Druid, which we saw in the last game through a very unconventional game, was able to get the lethal delivered. And he also believes his Cube Warlock has got what it takes to, he's been saying, take down Jade Druid, and it's definitely got a shot against Kazakus Priest as well.
Yeah, this Jungle Giants, I still want to be convinced. I know it's going to beat Priest a lot, but it seems to be so bad against like Rogue and some of these other decks. I need convincing that that deck is going to be good, and no better way to learn how to play it than watch the world champion play it, I guess.
That's right. And Roger here bringing a cube lock deck that he thinks will have what it takes to take down a Priest from Pavel. It's an interesting deck list, and I'm not sure if I like this version the most. I think I prefer making your Warlock really, really, really bad against Priest and then banning Priest, so making sure that it can always beat these aggressive decks. Because very often in this scenario, when he's up against Pavel, he will be very far behind on board, throw down a Void Lord, and it will basically be all in on there not being a Spellbreaker in order to win the game, which is not a great position to put yourself in.
However, he has run into the Rogue, which is just a lovely matchup, I think.
It's true, but Pavel has teched it to beat this one. He does have double Spellbreaker, and it's just Rogue. It can do pretty impressive things.
Yeah, Rogue's kind of the opposite. Like, Rogue is so powerful in general that you can afford to have 2 or 3 slots for those tech cards. Gio was talking earlier about the Spellbreaker slash Chain Gang interaction. You pick one or the other, and Pavel all in on the other interaction this time around.
Exactly. I think that's, in general, on ladder you do need to be choosing which way you're going for, but in a tournament format, if you're not banning Warlock and you're bringing Rogue, you just have to have the ability to combat it. But here for Pavel, he's got the ability to do so pretty well, getting a very decent start to get going with the Captain and a few Pirates to follow up. Means he's not too vulnerable to Defile from his point of view, but obviously there's a couple of fantastic activators for Roger, probably on the next turn.
Yeah, the whole thing with the Warlock deck, for those who haven't seen much of it, I don't know if you haven't seen it, where have you been? But if you haven't, if they can just get those taunts established, the 3/9s even, and you just win the game most of the time. Like you say, the Spellbreakers do throw a bit of a fly in that ointment, so not completely over if that happens. But on the other side of it, these Giants will hold the fort longer, just in terms of trading minions away.
Yeah, this is obviously a good spot for Roger to be able to be cleared off the board. On the next couple of turns, he can go for something like Mountain Giant or Lackey, Coin Dark Pact to be able to completely lock down the board. But because he has the Doom Guards in there as well as the Void Lords, it might not necessarily be a massive taunt he's sticking in the way, which he could then Faceless or Carnivorous Cube and do all kinds of nonsense. It might just be a Charger, which, while a fantastic play, is not as absurd as the Void Lord.
Just not as absurd. That's the levels you're dealing with here, though. So already Pavel's trying to work out how he's going to get his Creeper down to a decent cost. How is he going to get his Bone Mare to stick on something? If those two things do not happen, he's going to be in a world of pain, and he's decided to play the Apothecary down because it's actually a decent-sized minion. Yeah,
I love this. You do kind of need to be afraid from pressure from the Warlock, because obviously the kind of nonsense they can pull off with Cube and Manipulator in combination with the Doom Guards is pretty scary. But because there's no Spirit Singer Umbra in this deck, the true ridiculous one-turn combo is not there, as most players have started to realize it's probably not quite worth the inconsistency.
Yeah, it was really difficult to know what to do with the Umbra, actually. It looked like a great card, but it also always felt a little bit win more. Like, if you're in front, it's great. If you're behind, it's rubbish. And I feel that they seem to be coming down the side of don't need it now.
I wonder.
So now for Pavel, very interesting options here, because killing off the Lackey here, he obviously knows he has a chance to pull out Doomguard and a chance to pull out the Void Lord. So he's considering, is it ever worth doing it on this turn because I can in some way deal with it? Maybe you can take out the Doomguard if it were to come down, but it just doesn't really seem worth it, because if it is a Void Lord, you don't want to give charge. I'm doing quotation here. by
In front of a
making
camera that can't see you. Well done,
exactly.
Derek.
That's why I gave an audio description as well.
Okay. I mean, you didn't have to actually do it.
Yeah, but that was for you, Neil. It was a
I
present.
appreciate it so much.
Merry Christmas.
So, realising obviously that Roger's main removal, other than Defile, is to use these Doom Guards, Pavel was going as wide as possible last turn just to make sure there were more threats down there. And one turn away from being able to land the Bone Mare.
I mean, there are just so many good options here available for Roger. He can go for the Faceless to copy a couple of Doom Guards and just go for the
Yeah,
face
who needs
try
to
and kill off
trade
his
when you
opponent?
can just kill the person trying to beat you?
And this actually makes sense. He's got lethal on the following turn with Cube into Dark
a
Pact.
million different ways,
Yeah,
right?
it's very, very easy lethal, even if one is cleared off. So it would have to be 1-drop plus Valspine here to be able to pull this back for Pavel. But at the same time, that's actually not that ridiculous that it could come down. But again, having said that, even if that does come down, Roger can just go Lackey into Dark Pact, and then you're pulling out a Void Lord, and you're still in a ridiculously good position. I love this play from Roger.
Yeah, I'm trying to find any way where Pavel can actually get out of this. I don't think there is one.
Dead. Yep.
Roger's just going to take this down in brutal fashion with a turn 6 kill. This is how this deck actually was first built.
Right, yeah.
It was touted for the very first few hours of the build as, oh, there's a new combo kill OTK Warlock deck. That's not how it is developed.
Yeah.
But this was actually the original sort of idea behind the deck of this whole OTK thing. And just showing, sometimes just go back to your roots.
Yeah, it seems to work there. And that was a great spot from Roger because, to be honest, I was tunnel visioning on clearing the board. I thought by copying the Doom Guard, you're just trying to clear off everything before the Bone Mare comes down. But because he perfectly realized that the Bone Mare was still a turn away, he could just go on the aggressive. And even if there is a Valspine that comes down, he could still get out of Void Lord and still be very likely to take that game.
1-0, and Taiwan need a win here because if Pavel wins this, we're already guaranteed one of the rest of world players in the final. So Taiwan need to keep that left-hand side of the draw alive by winning this one. But Roger off to the great start for doing that. 1-0 already.
Yeah, he's in a really nice spot now because for Pavel, the Rogue, it's going to be... He's got a chance of taking wins with this, I would say. He's got a good shot. The Spellbreaker is now really not good for him because he doesn't really want it in any of the remaining matchups for him. Against the Paladin, however, if you can find cards like Backstab, SI7 Agent, you have such a good chance of just locking out the early game, and then all of a sudden Divine Favor isn't getting any value. So that is a very reasonable matchup for Pavel to be trying to hit on the next game.
What world are we in where Rogue is being talked about as a bit of an iffy deck? What's even going on, Derek?
A deck where you have turn 6 lethal with Doom Guards as a control Warlock. That's the kind of world we're living in here.
Yeah, that's pretty ridiculous. Obviously, it gets banned out on one side, and the other side we're talking about it as it's a bit iffy.
Right.
In very similar lineups, apart from that Paladin versus the Druid, which is big favourite for the Paladin, obviously.
Yes.
It's actually kind of a similar matchup, but Roger does seem to have the better of the lineup matchups here.
Pavel's taken certain precautions to protect his Druid against aggro from or absolutely no spreading plagues whatsoever, which was really not good enough at all against aggro. But for Pavel, he's taken that precaution to try and protect him against it.
So, Roger, interesting looking opening hand here. He's going to be able to curve and keep what he wants in this. Obviously, there's stuff he's going to throw away, like the weapon, but Divine Favor actually not that great either against Rogue, because Rogue doesn't really spew its hand everywhere. So just the deck hand.
Yeah, I can respect keeping the deck hand. One of
His hand is garbage.
It's not good as of yet, but just a couple of cards make this so good. A Backstab,
Keleseth and Shadows.
Keleseth or Backstab, or just a Firefly on turn 1 is fine just to start shutting down what's going on here, because any 1-drop followed up by a weapon just will probably put you ahead against this aggro Paladin. It's got so many cheap 1-health minions that the dagger makes it ridiculously efficient at clearing them off.
I was going to say Roger could really do with a 1-drop non-pirate here. That's exactly what he's drawn on turn 1. This makes such a difference. This means his captain offers some patches defense right at the start and really slows down Pavel's ability to remove stuff. But like you say, this backstab that he drew that you said would be a good draw is going to help Pavel out no end.
Pavel does now have a very nice little hand, though. A lot of combo enablers and a lot of combo cards with the Backstab, Shadow Step, Elven Minstrel, and SI to really start pushing onto the board here. And while Elven is slow in this matchup in terms of which is just completely kill off everything from the Paladin, it's a nice way to actually refill turn 5 or 6 so that you can make sure you're not falling behind once you've used all your resources to clear the board.
Yeah, and all you need to do is just keep clearing that board. If you can start rendering Blessing of Kings useless, suddenly you've just gained a card. If you can keep your hand a sensibly small size, you can render that Divine Favour useless as well, which Pavel's hand is going to empty itself a bit more rapidly than I first was describing the way this has been turning out.
It's interesting here for Roger, though. He's got some arguably fairly difficult decisions, because going forward, something like double deck hand or maybe even hero power, but probably not on this turn, allows him coin Blessing of Kings, which would actually be really good before the Valspine can come down. But I guess that exact card of Spellbreaker might be what was turning him off of the play, in addition to the raw power of Captain Patches.
Yeah, just wiping everything out. Well, Neo's done. Is everything enough, considering that next turn is the turn that Roger needs to do stuff, not now? It's only turn 3. I keep saying this every single match. It's only turn 3. There's no chance of Blessing of Kings this early, despite the number of interactions we've had on board already.
You know, it's a great cast when you're putting addendums onto things like he can clear off everything enough. Everything enough.
I know. Shush, let me get away with one.
I'm sorry, friend.
No, you're good, man. You're good.
Yeah, but the Wolf does allow now for a almost clear, as I myself blundered there.
Yeah, this will teach you, son.
Right, yeah, that was instant karma.
This is why,
fair enough.
Right, this is why we don't do that thing.
But it's a great follow-up for Pavel. That double Spellbreaker coming into play is, a bit of a punish for building your lineup in this way to stand up against Warlock instead of just banning it. You're bringing an aggressive deck. But at the same time, it will get the job done once the Blessing of Kings comes down. And a 4-mana 4/3 is not nothing. It's a body that might be able to start to fight back against what Roger is throwing down.
Yeah, the Juggler didn't do its thing very well at all there. Roger not trading till after the Juggler had a go, so there's less chance of it hitting face. Obviously, you want to clear the minions so you can get the little minions to hit their face, but
this turn is just silly as well. The Elven Minstrel finally managing to find a place where he's far enough ahead on board, such as that the tempo loss of playing a 4-mana 2/3 is not so bad, and it means on the following turns he's got answers to no matter what. Even if patch is being drawn, it's not the end of the world, because it can just be thrown down in combination with the Captain for a quick 2-damage charger to clear out anything else that comes down from Roger.
Roger has his exact opening hand that he mulliganed most of away has just come back.
That's a fair point.
And it's not as versatile as it first looked right now. He'll be working out what he thinks he can get from Divine Favour at this point, I think.
Yeah, most definitely.
In terms of influencing this board.
And that was the downside of Pavel's play. We saw from Firebat earlier just tossing the Circle of Healing to deny potential Divine Favor value. So clearly players are starting to realize this is often the win condition for Paladin. If they can draw 3-4 cards off of that, there's always a way back in. But in this particular instance, Pavel's realizing my cards are just as good as my opponent's cards. And with double Spellbreaker Leroy in hand, he needs better cards.
Yeah, those Spellbreakers will slow things down, but they're not going to win him the game. They will sort of stop Blessing of Kings from being any good, but that's about it. But he's got enough stuff in the deck. I mean, he's going to start drawing into the proper cards in a minute.
Yeah.
Corridor Creepers, the Bone Mares. Creeper will be cheap enough, despite the fact that it will start off obviously at 7. There's going to be enough board trades for the rest of this game that it will soon come down.
Yeah, this is still just looking so good for Pavel. Could have considered going for Patch's Valspine there, because although he wants to milk out the value from Spellbreaker while he can, there's not actually too much that the Valspine wants to hit anyway. It's just there's not really any big minions apart from the Tarim in the Paladin's deck. So I would have liked considering that play, but this is just Pavel all over. He is a lightning fast player.
Yeah, and Roger's going to have a crazy Divine Favour. It's going to be way too late by the look of this. Pavel just lethal next turn a million different ways again.
Yep. There is nothing that can be done here for Roger. He can obviously throw out the Righteous Protector, go with the Divine Favour, but there's so much damage for Pavel. Now keeping the Valspine, I just suppose the Spellbreaker does it anyway, so no matter how you want to do it, it's super duper lethal for Pavel.
Super duper lethal. One game all. Wasn't behind for long.
That's right. But the Rogue doing what the Rogue is supposed to do. As I said, Pavel did manage to hit that matchup against the Paladin, which is really nice for him. But with the Paladin still there, in the way Conquest works, it is still going to be available to combat against that Druid for Pavel, which is a scary one, but he's definitely got game against it with the double Spreading Plague in his deck.
Yeah, that Druid matchup is not good. And the Priest matchup, there's a lot of talk that the Priest is actually nowhere near as favoured as I think it is personally. I mean, people seem to think that matchup's like 50-50. I like the priest myself.
Against the paladin,
yeah.
right? Okay. Yeah, I do like the priest as well. We saw earlier on from Firebat, he looked to be in a fairly dominant position throughout, even drawing Anduin in like the bottom 6 cards of his deck or something like that. But very often, if there is a couple of early good minions followed up by Call to Arms, it's basically just a deck that demands an immediate answer from priest, and sometimes it just isn't there.
Yeah, and I think that priest now with the pyro as a staple completely and all that, I think it just makes the paladin has hard work.
Okay.
But I've always been a bit down on the old paladins, and the top players in the world still keep bringing them back, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah, there is indeed. I miss the days of proper mid-range paladin of the GVG era, a truly glorious deck indeed. But this is, I actually really like the aggro paladin as well. I love the way it plays. Call to Arms feels like such a great flavorful card, bringing out all the small guys from your deck and also thinning it out to make sure you're drawing the top end of your deck as well.
Now, I always talk at this point about how most players randomise. I'm not sure Pavel's a randomiser. I think
Really?
he might be the sort of guy who fancies he can outguess his opponent. I really just get that impression about him. George C gives off the same vibe as I can outguess you.
Yeah, I mean, well, Pavel gives off the vibe that he thinks he could fight Mike Tyson, so...
He probably could for about 3 seconds.
Yeah, he could fight him, I suppose, but he wouldn't
And
have
he
much
probably
success,
would
I
as
suppose.
well.
Yeah, it's true.
He's insane.
Is something funny, Mike?
Anyone who's met Pavel will realise that's almost exactly what he would say. He does lose the queue up, though, and he's now got to find a way to beat the paladin with the druid.
Now, we saw from Kuanet earlier on that even against the very aggressive decks, against the Hunter in particular, he was still keeping the quest against them. But for Pavel here, I could understand it a lot more because there's already the Wild Growth and the Jasper Spellstone in hand, but still, I like this line of play. He knows it's such an aggressive deck here for the Paladin that his win condition is just ramping up Plague and maybe UI a little bit later on down the line, so he just does not need the quest.
Roger's showing patience here. He kept that call to arms, meaning that he realises that I've got 5 or 6 turns to kill you.
Right.
I don't have to get turn 1, turn 2 super curve.
Oh,
I'm going to get
absolutely.
that anyway
Yeah.
to some extent. Let's get the turn 4 mega push. I'm using really weird megas and supers here.
It's
Yeah.
true, but I think Call to Arms is a keep in pretty much every matchup because you have such a high chance of getting 1-drops with this deck. A lot of your deck is 1-drops. And it's just the most ridiculously powerful play on turn 4. We see decks that are running Spiteful Summoner to hit the Dino size are still running Call to Arms because you just have to. It's so absurd.
Pavel has pretty much everything he could want here, including that Nourish, which is going to be very useful when he gets there, whether he wants cards, whether he wants ramp, depending on how his hand develops.
Yep. If he gets any big card whatsoever, I would very much expect to see a Nourish for mana because that's just a much more effective play at keeping up on the board because even just fitting in a single hero power can be everything that you need to stay in the game.
But his hand is kind of strange the way it's developing, so it may end up being that he goes for cards. It means he'll be able to just take his time to clear things up, and then play things at their normal mana cost, but you don't want to be doing it that way, obviously.
And to be fair, it's awkward for Pavel kind of from his own doing because he had the option on the last turn to go Coin Wild Growth, which would mean on the following turn he can go Spellstone into hero power and probably take out whatever comes down because on turn 2 it's likely to be Direwolf Alpha or Knife Juggler. So there's a really good chance he could have cleared the board off and gained the extra mana, whereas in this instance it's turn 3 and he still hasn't played the Wild Growth.
So now he probably won't play it again. And Roger, I'm going to use the word punish. It's not the right word, though, because it's the right keep. Sort of the call to arms now, keep, means that turn 3 was just hero power pass for Paladin, which is not where it wants to be.
It was pretty unfortunate, though, drawing pretty much the whole top of your deck. Obviously, Corridor Creeper is the most expensive card, but not really, let's be honest. But the follow-up of Call to Arms is still perfectly good enough. You are so happy to throw it down here, hopefully getting Knife Jugglers, Direwolves, things like that. The 1-drops are not quite as impactful, but if this can stick around leading into Tarim, this is the push that Roger needs to really just shove Pavel out of this game completely.
Yeah, but Pavel's getting the ramp, which is going to allow that Nourish to turn into a card draw.
Exactly.
So now he's managed to get so much out of this. Nourish is going to act like a pretend UI, and a pretend UI is still pretty good.
It's all right. It's a pretty poor imitation.
Or UI is a really good imitation of Nourish. Because Nourish came first. Like, it's just like, can you be better than me? And UI just says, yeah, hold my coffee, here we go.
It does it pretty well as well.
just a bit. So Pavel's not managed to keep everything off the board because of that call to arms keep. And now Roger's got targets for all of this good buff stuff.
Yeah, and this is what Call to Arms allows him to do. It means following up the buffs on Tarim and Blessing of Kings will hit. It means that the draws for Roger are a lot better now because there's way less 1-drops in his deck, as Pavel now finds Ultimate Infestation. So we're probably just going to see Nourish for Ramp in combination with the Faceless here. What a play from Pavel. I love this.
Yeah, just get that UI that
Yeah.
we're talking about, we all know and love. That's not a very good card right now, but it will be next turn.
It will be, and I think Roger knows that that final card is UI. Otherwise, you wouldn't really dream of playing the Nourish in that instance. You would just not play it and use the Faceless Manipulator itself and then draw on one of the following turns. But in this particular instance, the Ultimate Infestation is going to be great for Pavel. And even though it gives Roger the ability to draw a fair few cards, with Tarim and Valinir in his hand, it's not actually even that much.
Right, so Roger went to clear the Divine Shield there, then he was going to Tarim and just have a fairly mediocre play, but now he's looking at keeping it one extra turn for the Lost in the Jungle Tarim combo. That's why he suddenly paused, like, oh, I just need to have another look at this just to make sure that that is the play I want to go with. It was the play he wanted to go with, but I think he suddenly realised that Valinir and Trade, followed by Lost in the Jungle and Tarim, was actually another option that he hadn't seen.
Yeah. I do like this play of not going for the Valinir, because that would have left the 6/5 completely healthy on the board, and then that's the perfect target for UI. And you just can't leave that in this instance, because he was definitely expecting the Ultimate Infestation to come down for that all-important 5 damage. And while he can now draw a fair few cards, and it's in a respectable position, Spreading Plague, Swipe, maybe even with a Malagos if he has the time, will probably just seal the deal for Pavel.
Probably hasn't got that much removal left.
It's true.
He's used a lot of it in just not dying early on, but yeah, he's in an okay spot.
Spreading Plague is a pretty good card. Even in the last series, I was thinking you should just never underestimate what a Druid can do after UI. It's always ridiculous.
So with that in mind, Roger is keeping this board incredibly narrow and just hitting face, just to make that Spreading Plague
that's
less
really nice.
ridiculous.
Yeah, I like this a lot. But from Pavel, there's still the ability to Faceless Manipulator one of his opponent's minions once again. We could see that in combination with the Wrath to take out 3/3. He's probably not going to be wanting to go for the Plague quite yet, even with the second one picked up. It's still a little bit risky.
Yeah, if Pavel can overturn this incredibly bad matchup, in my opinion at least, then he's going to be in such a great spot in this match.
He is, however, going to be very afraid of cards like Leroy coming down, maybe even just the deckhand, to be able to push a bit of extra damage with the Valinor.
Roger has put Pavel in a really tricky spot here. He's sort of tapping his head as if to say he thinks he made a mistake somewhere along the line, but looks like he's in a pretty sweet spot here.
I've liked what Roger has done. He didn't give a good target for UI on the previous turn, and on this turn he played around Spreading Plague. He's realised he's not in so bad of a position that he can't afford to play around every card from the Druid. He's in a position where he can afford to do so because of the fact that he's just got such powerful late game cards in his hand and the Divine Favour to follow up.
Summon 2 Silverhand Recruits.
Yeah, kind of wishes he had the Tarim now to follow up with all these 1/1s he could make, but even so, still in a respectable position, I suppose you could say. But the Plague finally is going to be getting a really good amount of value here.
Yeah, Pavel going wide to defend there, and then it just sets up the Plague. Corridor Creeper a little bit too late, maybe? Or is Corridor Creeper ever too late?
I mean, it's fine in this instance, but I mean, looking at it now, it doesn't even need to be the Plague. It can just be safe for Pavel because the swipe perfectly plays off everything. Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. And Roger obviously had to go for the Champion's Maul there because he wants to be able to draw more cards with the UI. Oh, sorry, with the Divine Favour. But it means that the killing of the Direwolf is going to completely destroy that weapon anyway. So for Pavel, he just needs to wait his way through, hopefully get down that Spreading Plague. And Malagos on its own should be winning this game for him if he can stabilise. But it's still very, very close.
I think he's actually working out how Corridor Creeper can hurt him here, I think.
Okay.
If I kill all these things and he drops a 0-mana Corridor Creeper, what are the other 3 cards? How can bad things happen there?
Well, if he goes for attack into the wolf first and then Spreading Plague swipe, the thing is that he'll have a fair few taunts left in play. So even if Corridor Creeper does come down, it should protect him for a turn so that he can drop that Malagos, which is so important. Because even now, he's actually thinking, do I play the swipe? Because Malagos swipe is so absurdly powerful but because of the double benefit, or the double possibility of drawing another swipe from his deck, and also just Malagos being a 4/12, I think it's perfectly fine to throw it down here.
He may just win this game the old-fashioned way, where you kill your opponent until they die.
Ah, the classic.
The classic.
The
The way we used to play it back when I was a lad.
Back in the day, yeah.
Before people started killing each other in one turn.
We played our Squire on 1, our 3/2 Knife Juggler on 2.
And then we waited for a week for the other guy to email back, to post back the results.
Oh, okay.
You've killed my 1/1, I play a 2/2, your go.
Let me sleep.
3 weeks later.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't decide to go for post-Hearthstone in the end.
Postal Hearthstone would probably not have worked.
The light protects me.
Yeah, now Roger does have the ability to destroy the Valinor, to kind of send it back to his hand to buff up the Creeper. But with the second Plague available for Pavel, he's still got the ability to get an incredibly powerful board once again.
Yeah, he has, but he's finding it hard to find a way to actually win the game right now. That should change very soon,
Yeah.
and it will change eventually, but
I mean,
how do you get 1/1s through this?
Oaken Summons is great anyway, and the thing is as well that the stats from Spreading Plague alone will probably just win him the game, because it's not going to be gotten through by Roger, even with the repetitive Valinor over and over again. It's just a bit too slow, especially when you have drawn all of your weapons in the last 3 turns.
Yep. Yeah, hasn't had the most efficient pressure, but then he had the pressure early on, so looking so good for Pavel here.
And as soon as something like a Nourish or UI is found again for Pavel, then he'll have that crazy refill to really start closing out the game.
It's going to be a big board from Roger that now can't be Spreading Plague.
That's true.
So I'm trying to work out how much time he has to draw a second Creeper or a buff that matters. Blessing of Kings.
There's just quite a lot of good cards actually for Pavel though. Malfurion would be great. Creepers aren't even that bad. Obviously Swipe, Ultimate Infestation, Coon are all great cards to find in this instance. So it's far from running out of gas at this point.
Yeah, and he's only got 11 cards left in the deck as well. So
Right.
very soon, that's going to be important.
Is this a Malagos turn, Neil?
Well, it depends.
On what?
On whether he wants to cycle this Wrath into some of that big stuff you mentioned, and how much big stuff is actually playable if he draws into it.
That's true, but while Wrath for 1 and drawing is good, Wrath for 6 and drawing as well is very good.
Yeah, that's pretty good. He's not dying anytime soon, most likely.
The thing is, if he doesn't play the Malagos now, when is he really going to be playing it,
Right.
to be honest? Because he's got 2 taunts in play, and until Malfurion comes down, I guess he's never really going to have that ability once again. So it looks like with the playing of Jungle Giants, he is setting up for it, and I really like this play. Carrying on with the semi-aggressive line of play, he's still clearing off when he needs to, even keeping the taunts alive, valuing it higher than a 5/1.
Killing enough stuff that this rallying blade's not going to be making enough difference. But if anything was going to give Roger a reason not to concede this turn, it was this card.
Still manages to get all 3 minions there. I wasn't even sure if there were enough minions left in the deck, as I have often found myself with this deck only pulling 1 or 2, because you just draw your whole deck so quickly as this aggro paladin.
Yeah, this Mill Druid deck is running Roger down to 6 cards.
Who'd have thought, eh? As well,
Juggler snipes nicely.
perfect knife comes down, but even so, the Wrath here, in combination with the Swipe, I think just closes out the game right away.
Seems fair. Why not?
Yeah, the absolute perfect pickup. Not lethal quite yet for Pavel.
Yeah, it's closed out the game, though. You didn't
Yep.
say he was going to kill him. You said he's closed out the game, and I can agree that this looks pretty closed out right now.
Yep.
And that's losing any game of Hearthstone in the best of 5 is not good, but losing a massively favoured matchup here is a disaster for Roger, and he's going to have to make a comeback if Taiwan are going to have anyone in the final from the left-hand side of the draw, even on day 1.
And while earlier I was saying from Kuanet and the other Quest Druid we saw earlier today, I didn't like its performance because it was just not tech to deal with aggro at all. And you're very often going to be finding yourself in a position where you do have it up against aggro. So you need to have at least some amount of game to fight back against that. So I like the decision here of putting Malfurion and putting Spreading Plague in, just to make sure that you still have a very favored game against decks like the Priest and the Warlock, but you are just giving yourself a really good shot against the Paladins of this world as well.
So he's only got Priest left. I've heard this deck's quite good.
I hear that too.
Yeah, I was looking in in chat in between games like you do, and they seem to think that Priest is quite good as well in their own little way.
Really?
Yeah.
Quite easy.
People were mentioning that they thought it was a good deck.
Right, okay.
So
And
I'll go to agree with them.
I think if we pretend we know nothing else about Hearthstone, imagine that, and just based it on today's performance, we could see that this Kazakus Priest has been doing incredibly well indeed. From Firebat with some very well-piloted games, I would say. Even Anduin at the bottom of his deck could still beat the Paladin. So I think for Pavel, he's got such a good shot of taking out this Paladin. And even against the Mirror, taking a look at his Kazakus deck, it's got pretty good shot against the in the Mirror matchup. He's got Gadget Sand in there, which is a really nice way to guarantee yourself Raza and Anduin as quickly as possible. And there aren't too many anti-aggro cards in the deck, which means he is weakening himself against Paladin slightly, but making it much more favorable in the other matchup against Priest.
Yeah, it's interesting how we've managed to get it to a situation now where Priest is getting played and not banned.
Right.
Because of the way that Warlock has got so powerful as well, and the way that Rogue interacts in a weird way with how Priest and Druid fit together. So sometimes banning the Rogue out works well, even though you don't really want to ban it because it's not one of the best two decks.
And Pavel gets a pretty nice hand to get things going even before the mulligan. And with the pickup of Kazakus as well, he has truly Paveled his way into a very nice starting hand. And Roger is going to have to get some truly disgusting cards to bring this back.
Pretty
and
disgusting.
He kind of does do that. This is not bad at all for Roger.
Yeah, interesting to see how he navigates the coin, given that he's got Auctioneer in hand. See how slow he wants to play, because there's no hurry to assemble. Well, there is. You've got 8 turns.
Right.
That's the hurry.
Yes.
But you can do Auctioneer stuff before 8 turns, so... Also, keeping the coin does enable you to go turn 7. Obvious thing.
Exactly.
Get ahead, so...
And it also allows you more disgusting combos after the Anduin comes down, because very often in this matchup, it's not just a race to Raza and Anduin, it's a race to the one-turn combo, or at the very least 20, 24 damage, something like that. That means you can just blast out your opponent, even through things like the Priest of the Feast, the Binding Heal, the Spirit Lash, all these kind of things that allow the Priest to survive the slow, gradual damage from the pew-pews of Anduin.
Pavel... decision time here. You want all of these cards later. You don't want to play any of them on this particular turn a lot of the time. There's not much to be gained from dropping the Cleric because you can just get pained. You'd rather wait to heal it up en masse, maybe get 3 or 4 cards. Yep. The Radiant Elemental's better when you're actually post-combo if you can last that long. And the damage is irrelevant. Damage to your opponent, as you start chipping away for 6s and 7s, just doesn't influence the outcome of the game.
You're absolutely right. In the Mirror, the board control is all but irrelevant. Maybe if you can get a crazy start with Radiant and Power Word Shield, as we saw against the Quest Druid in earlier games, and follow up with Kazakus for plus health, you can start considering board control route. But in the vast, vast majority of cases, you just want to be drawing cards, getting to your Raza and Anduin, with maybe getting a bit of chip damage in the meantime.
Not the world's easiest decision here. None of those things really do anything. But he picked the first part so quick, I'm assuming it was 2 cards.
I would imagine so.
Like, we didn't even see it on the screen. We saw it, but I'm too old. I can't spot those things that quickly.
That is just, again, classic Pavel. I believe recently in China, he would make all his decisions incredibly quickly. Strangely, apart from turn 1 often, he considers that one in the tempo matchups most heavily of all, which I think is good play, because how you peter out your early resources in those games is very important.
Yeah, and you can often work out what you want to do for the first 3 turns on turn 1. If you mess up that turn, then that's when the problems happen.
But here for Pavel, the perfect potion coming into play. The 5 damage turns out to be a lot better than the transform, and obviously it was draw 2 cards as the first effect, so he's still in a fantastic spot. As for Roger, there is no ability, or there's no Raza or Anduin quite yet. So for Pavel, he just needs to be cycling through to that Raza, and he'll be in a very dominant position indeed.
Yeah, Roger's got a few pickups that will make his hand a lot better very quickly. Because his hand is so cheap, Radiant Elemental with his Auctioneer would be a thing he can do. Obviously, so he can play catch-up, but he's got to play catch-up pretty soon, because Pavel's going to start rifling through his own deck. But Roger has a very spell-heavy hand with his Auctioneer, so I wouldn't write him off just yet.
Yeah, and I like this as well from Pavel. Going for the Glimmeroo is very likely to come down on this turn, so going for Shadow Visions. You know, if he had a Circle of Healing or a Spirit Lash in his hand with the Northshire Cleric, I could consider going for some kind of a big draw option. But with this play just getting out the highest statted minion, then following up with a Shadow Visions seems much more appropriate.
Not a lot doing there.
Well, you know, as I was saying, if he had Spirit Lash, he might consider going for some kind of a crazy draw option. And now that he's got the other Shadow Visions, he can try and find Circle of Healing, which could give him a stupid amount of draw.
Talking a stupid amount of draw, this Radiant Elemental has opened that option up to Roger in the long run.
And he's just going with the fact that he can, well, obviously not mill a card on this turn if he goes for the Radiant, but also hopefully set up for Auctioneer to just draw 4 or 5 cards on the following turn with the coin and all these cheap spells.
Yeah, these power plays that they're both trying to set up. Now, there is the Circle of Healing for Pavel, so he's going to be able to draw a load of cards if he can make space in his hand. The great thing with the Auctioneer turn that could come from Roger is the space gets made as you go. So you actually get to cycle through your deck, replacing one card with another. Pavel's got a little bit more trickery to do than that. He's got to actually empty enough space to Circle of Healing for a lot.
And this is a difficult turn indeed. I'm looking at potentially Cleric, Heal the Crab, Spirit Lash, Circle, but then you're very likely looking into overdrawing at that point as he already has the full 10 cards in hand. So maybe, although he has the ability to go Cleric with Circle and the Spirit Lash, he might just delay a little bit and instead on this turn go for Shadow Visions, take it a little bit slower. Maybe it's not worth drawing here, but because he can guarantee himself at least 3 cards drawn here, probably a few more, I do like this line of play.
I wonder if you don't ever want to slow yourself down. I just wondered how much he's going to do here in terms of emptying these spells on your opponent's face. But this is perfect. Take yourself to 9 cards.
Yeah.
The right number.
No, I really like this too, actually. I think with many other lines of play, he would get himself in a position where he's burning Holy Smite, which you don't want to be doing because you want that for the combo. If he'd gone for the hero power to heal the crab beforehand, he could have run into that position where he's just overdrawing, so he needs to dump cards. But in this line of play, he's put himself in a position where there is the ability for Roger to draw, to overdraw him by 1, actually. So maybe that could have been slightly differently sequenced by Pavel to draw 1 less card, but he's put himself in a good spot to be finding Raza and hopefully not have it mulliganed.
Yeah, if Roger was going to do anything clever there, he'd have gone for a lot of mill rather than a tiny bit. He's got his own problems. He's going to fish for his own stuff. He knows that Pavel didn't have it last turn.
Right.
Otherwise, Pavel wouldn't have gone crazy with those card draw, most likely. He'd have just started setting up combo. So he knows Pavel's missing at least 1 piece, or was.
He's looking hard for that Circle of Healing here, is Roger, because he knows he could mill his opponent so many cards.
If he gets
even
that,
going
he will
with the
go
silence. Oh, unable to find it. That would have been such a cool play if we'd seen the burn of Raza, but Roger realizing I'm not going to be able to burn my opponent's card from here on in, so just killing off the Cleric means that Pavel is still in a great position in this game.
Yeah, it's really strange. You go from the situation where your opponent's Cleric's hurting them to where your opponent's Cleric's now a danger, so you have to actually get rid of it.
Yeah.
In the space of a few seconds. And now Pavel's still searching. Look at the deck size. They're both down to 13 cards already. They've just gone crazy going through these decks.
Pretty silly. And that's actually what I really like to see, because although Anduin was found for Pavel right at the start of the game, he's not that far ahead actually in this instance, because they're both on fairly even deck sizes. If Roger is able to find something like Raza, or basically find exactly Raza and Anduin in the next couple of cards, he will all of a sudden be in the driving seat, because he's already got Velen, he's got Mind Blast, he can just start firing off everything towards his opponent's face and start pushing for lethal.
You get some really weird games when the key cards in the bottom 1 or 2.
Right.
You get some games where one of the players just runs out of ways to win. That's why it was crucial that Pavel saves the Mind Blast and the Holy Smite earlier. They're not common, but maybe 2% of the mirror matches are decided by somebody just running out of stuff entirely because they have to use a Holy Smite to draw a card to try and race. And Pavel's actually trying to sort of dodge that situation from coming up.
And now with the Circle of Healing for Roger, he can abuse Northshire Cleric's draw ability, not for Pavel to burn his cards, but just to be able to draw himself through to that Raza and Anduin he is so desperately looking for. But with a full 10-card hand, I'm not sure if he has the ability to do so right now. And if he's going to go for it, he has to start thinking very quickly indeed.
Yeah, this is something that no matter how many times you play this deck, you still have to count very carefully not to mess up. And he's going to wait until next turn to do it, just so he doesn't risk any sort of rope mess up. I'm pretty sure the play was there, and I'm pretty sure he's experienced enough to realise if I try and work this out, I'm going to quite often make a mistake here. Let's just do it next turn.
I think this is an instance where if we had double or triple the turn timer, there would have been a different play here. But he realised probably correctly, I will probably mess this up if I go for this. So I'm just going to go for the good enough play of playing out these guys. I'm still drawing cards, and I can go for North China Circle on the following turn. Still keep up my draw ability fairly well in the meantime.
Yeah, Roger's been a serious player on the scene for a long time. He knows better. He was winning Open Cups in 2014.
Right.
Like, so he's got the experience to say, okay, sometimes just admit you've sort of gone too slowly or whatever you've done wrong on that turn and just deal with it. Now it's Pavel's turn to try and work out what on earth to do with this hand.
It's a tough one. Something like Anduin coming down now feels like you could go for it because of the fact that there's no auctioneer on board that you have to kill off. But at the same time, going for the Psychic Scream here, while it's not denying the ability for Raza to activate, as many players will post on their Twitter pages showing, they played Raza like an idiot and it didn't activate. In this particular instance, it's just denying the draw of those cards. Maybe it's a couple of extra cards away now.
Yeah, and also it's like just buying Pavel a turn. He can do it again next turn if the setup is correct. And just keep buying those turns because he knows he's getting obviously closer than Roger is to this combo.
So for Roger here, still no Raza or Anduin in hand at the moment. Could draw 3-4 extra cards right now, I believe, if wanted, and it looks like Roger is going to be going for it.
Yeah, he spent last turn working this out. We know that from how he played the last turn. And now it's just about not overdrawing. He's got to start picking up bits in a minute, like he's nearly got no cards left.
Yeah, another Circle of Healing as well. He could draw. I think he could actually literally draw his entire deck over the next couple of turns, but obviously that would burn a whole bunch of cards, so it's not quite worth it. And given that he has seen the Circle of Healing already come down for Pavel, he feels a little bit more comfortable about leaving this out. But it's scary having an Acolyte and a Cleric on the board. I think there might be the ability for a couple of burns here for Pavel.
Double Loot Hoarder going into Roger's deck. There's 2 Loot Hoarders in that deck. Now he's got to draw either one of those as well as the combo.
Okay, this has suddenly got a lot harder for Roger, and this was really nice from Pavel. I was looking at the overdraw options here, but this kind of does the same thing, because it means Raza is really far away, and even if you draw it, it's not activated until the other Loot Hoarder is drawn.
So Pavel's had some weird turn of play, like weird set of turns, but making sure he uses the available resources to him, because Psychic Scream doesn't do much in this matchup other than that sort of blocking effect.
But now for Pavel, I think it is time to let rip with Anduin. You don't really need to be saving the Battle Cry effect, because for Velen, you know, if he's playing Velen before the combo comes down, great. You just kill it off with the pings anyway, and you're probably in a great spot. And he needs to start getting in those hero powers. One could even argue he should have gone for it on some of the previous turns to start getting in that repetitive damage with the hero power. But in this instance, I think it's perfectly good to start throwing it down and making sure you're getting the value out of each of the cards you're playing.
Yeah, you might as well. Getting your opponent's board cleared and getting them down to sort of 24, 26 is very different to 30. If they can't get to 30, then you can kill them with OTK so much easier. And now it's one Anduin apiece.
It is indeed, and I believe it is probably going to be coming down for Roger here, as he gives me a small heart attack before I realise he is in fact already has the Orkanite on board, so it doesn't make a difference which way he sequences the hero power. But for both players, trying to find Raza as quickly as possible, it's working in Pavel's benefit in 2 ways, as he is further into his deck. Well, I suppose 3 ways. He still has draw, and there's also that double Loot Hoarder in Roger's deck that he still needs to find. Yeah,
no, it's just doing 2 purposes. First of all, he's got that double Loot Hoarder, which is just a nightmare because he can't play Raza. And secondly, there's just 2 Loot Hoarders in the way.
Yeah, exactly. And you maybe can kill them off.
Shooting them and just wasting your time while Pavel's busy actually advancing his board state.
Exactly. And he is advancing his board state and also just keeping up with the draw, as he does now find Raza, and he's got a tremendous game plan after that as well, even with just Prophet Velen, Mind Blast, Holy Smite for 28 damage. I believe he will be in a great spot to just start pushing.
That's the number.
I've heard that is indeed, yeah, to maybe just start pushing lethal over the next couple of turns.
Roger, with the Lyra and the Auctioneer, we don't see that all the time, but it's becoming slowly more and more common, I think.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to go about it. We see
Raza, and it's green. It's not yellow.
That is not a yellow Raza. I pray to God that Roger realises that. I think he will.
I think the fact they both went on the same turn means the chance of a mistake is nearly 0. If they're going on different turns, then it's easier to mess up. But they actually went in together.
Oh my God, is he going to play it?
Whoa.
Oh my God, I'm going to... Does he not realise? It's also worth pointing out Oh my god, he's going to do it. He's going to do it. He plays it. Raz is down, and it doesn't reduce the hero power. Pavel clapping to his opponent as well.
Applauding Roger.
Oh my god.
Pavel has framed
It's
ahq
happened.
Roger.
That has to be the first big tournament Raza that just did not activate. That is absolutely absurd. And Pavel has just completely outplayed his opponent.
And why is it always Pavel? Sportingly taking it by
He's
laughing
just a
at his
god.
opponent.
He's just an absolute god. This is amazing. Oh. Poor Roger.
He's going to a loyal holder now, isn't he?
That would have been the most beautiful poetic justice I could have seen.
So Roger's now got to find a way to win by never having a machine gun effect against somebody who is. I mean, this needs to be one heck of a liver, is all I can say to that.
It has to be double Divine Spirit, Inner Fire, some nonsense like that. But even then, the Shadow Word Pain is already there. Pavel just cannot lose this game.
It was a hard mistake, mate. Like, the second those two little holders went together, it was like, hey, be aware.
I mean, I hate to say it, but come on, we spotted it,
Yeah,
Neil.
we're
Surely
casters, we
Roger
knew
should
what
have
was
realised
happening.
it. Come on. And now, while Pavel does not have lethal on this turn, he's correctly realising that face is the place for all these hero powers. Shadow Word Pain will do a great job as well of taking out the Lyra. And in the next couple of turns, I just don't think there's any way that Roger can stop himself from dying.
I think this is where Roger's supposed to call an admin and say that his Raza is bugged.
Yeah, the game's broken.
So Pavel looks like he's almost certainly going through. I can't see how he won't be.
This is amazing. I have loved Pavel's play throughout so far. That shuffle of Loot Hoarder, I was expecting it to just be a delaying of Raza as opposed to a complete cancelling.
And don't forget, Roger is here in front of a pretty large home crowd.
That's right.
Who have paid to cheer him on. So he might need an escort from the stage.
What a way to go out. And if you're going to be doing it against anyone, Pavel, you just know he's going to be clapping, laughing at you. He is never going to let this one go.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Whenever he sees you. It's not just now, it's like every time he sees you afterwards.
And I believe this is now going to be lethal available for Pavel with the Velen Mind Blast and Holy Smite to close out this game. What a way to end this series.
Yeah, Roger showed all that experience early in the game by taking his time with the Northshire Cleric when he knew he was going to possibly make a mistake.
Right.
And then he did that thing that he did. I don't even know how to describe
It's
it
too
anymore.
good. It's just too good.
Wow, you're a mean man.
I mean, come
Or
on.
mean man, one of the two.
Yeah, I think a mixture of the two. But, I mean, this is what you like to see. Not that Roger made a mistake necessarily, but Pavel deserved to win. He played better than his opponent. The Quest Druid, I actually kind of like what he's doing with this build of the deck. You see the pros whispering about Quest Druid saying, you know,